So welcome everybody to Mindshifters Radio Part 2. Thank you, Dr. Tim, for the awesome support that you give to people as we carry this message of first century Aramaic forgiveness on down the road, ultimately with vision of making it available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. Today is February the 17th, and we're halfway through the month of February already. Interesting how fast the time is flying. And, of course, our objective here is to make the tools, in particular of first century Aramaic forgiveness, available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. And we appreciate the fact that you're here to be part of that conversation. We've been talking about this amazing tool called forgiveness for, well, 12 years now. And appreciate the fact that you choose to lend your ears as we move this message down the road. We've been talking about this kind of the flow of how pain and trauma, fear, hostility, when repeated through our perceptual systems, can leave us in a state where that trauma repeats itself in a way that it looks like it's a current moment experience. So the mind, when it comes to re-experiencing trauma, doesn't recognize time. No matter how long ago the trauma occurred, and research is showing even generational assaults are included, the nervous system will replay those energetic patterns when any event or stimulus is there. Something as simple as a thought resonates them into activity. And when unresolved trauma is resonated into activity, especially if one lives in a state of unwillingness to look inside and take responsibility for that, then the mind will tend to create pictures according to the way it's instructed to show us that trauma. And so if there's an unresolved trauma within me and I want to blame whoever I'm looking at today, then my mind will literally make up a picture based upon its internal set and the content that's resonated that will bring about the mind that shows us that what's going on inside of us is caused by something outside of us. You know, we've referred to that as the one world religion of blame. And when we live in blame, then the mind has to back up our instructions and show us that what's moving inside of us is attached or connected to something outside of us, and therefore we can play the blame game. So depending on the inputs and defaults underlying the action of the mind, the unconscious attitudes that are based in trauma and insecurity, if we just play them out repeatedly without ever interrupting the cycle and going inside to look at the root of it, then those energetic patterns make life a struggle. You know, relationships become a struggle, health becomes a challenge, and the projection of unresolved pain interferes with, at that point, with everything that one touches. You know, it's kind of like the reverse of the Midas touch idea. And, of course, it's important to realize that all of these dynamics are healable. So recognizing that perception is a construct of the mind, and that those constructs are reflective of the content of the mind. However, if the mind is directed to show us that somebody or something else is the reason for it, then the underlying truth of what's going on inside will be turned into pictures of something on the outside. Now, there's a dynamic we've identified in our codependence to interdependence work that we call the power person dynamic. It's usually a parent, though not always. And if in our experience, and again, it's usually a parent and a child, the child being the object of the situation and the parent being the power person. And if that power person inflicts trauma on a child, the moment that trauma is moving between the parent and the child, if the parent, obviously if they're inflicting something on the child, is not functioning out of love, and that parent has more power over the child's life, at least in the child's mind, than the child has themselves, and the child perceives the situation as survival, then what happens is the child's energy field opens and simply, literally on an energetic level, becomes like a sponge and absorbs all of the energetic dynamics within the environment. And these unresolved parental and generational relationship issues they're almost invariably at the root of these controlling power person abuse dynamic. If you've ever said to yourself, I'm never going to be like them, and then find yourself repeating those behaviors, those attitudes that you hated most, sometimes right down to the exact same word patterns. If one functions without realizing what's moving inside themselves because the root of it's kept closed, one functions out of unconscious dynamics. And at that point, one perceives life, especially when they're under stress, both unwittingly and unwillingly, through the lens of the power person, the abuser. And the corrupt content of memories from the past are weaved into perceptions of the moment. So one, and of course the title of my book, the root of that, or the way that people often express that is, why is this happening to me again? Why is every situation the same? I mean, are all people like this? And few ever wake up to and recognize that the why is this happening to me again component of a traumatic event is coming from those repeated patterns of unresolved memories. The ancients cautioned, look to the lives of the fathers, and of course by implication the mothers, for ours is but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. They also informed us that there's a rather poorly understood problem with the human mind, and the way they spoke of it was, we see as though through a glass darkly. It's interesting to note that the root of the word translated as darkly in the Greek texts translate as an enigma, something mysterious, puzzling, or difficult to understand. And so when the mind is basing its constructs on an unresolved internal dynamic and has the ability to take that dynamic and massage it in such a way so that it looks like a current moment event, one's stuck in an enigma, something that's mysterious, puzzling, and difficult to understand. We see as though through a glass darkly, and we work through those enigmas with forgiveness. It becomes the key. And when you have the brain cells for it, then you recognize that 2,000 years ago, they understood the dynamics, convoluted the mind can become when it's functioning out of the traumatized human mind, body, nervous system. If one has not been taught, or were falsely taught, that perception, the output of the human mind body system, is literally just that, if they haven't been taught what emotions and traumas do to distort the mind's output, difficulty is sure to follow, and the word enigma appropriately describes what it takes to move through deep healing on one's own. Of course, many will proclaim, but I'm smarter than that. For it doesn't matter how smart you are, without a knowledge of the source of your perceptions, even of what perception is, or how to correct it, and the trauma contained at the root of ongoing experiences. Yeah, the output of the mind, body, nervous system is truly a mysterious, puzzling, and difficult thing to understand. And some of it's downright shocking when you first learn it, when you first start to comprehend it. And many would say, oh, no, that's just silly. That's not possible, when they first start to confront the truth of what's going on in their own minds. There's several things that have been hidden from us about this mysterious enigma called perception, the glass that Paul said we see through darkly. And they're simply urgent to understand if you're going to clean up your life and free yourself from that victimhood and blame game. You know, we've been working with bringing this information forward on perception for decades and offering it to people. A couple of years ago, we came across a piece of research from the CIA that, you know, just verifies this shocking but true understanding of the mind. And you can download, there's actually a link on our website where you can download the CIA's book on the study of intelligence. In the chapter on perception, where they're working to get the best perceptual data out of people's minds, out of their agents' minds. And so they come to the conclusion, and as I say, you can download the book and read it for yourself. Perception is demonstrably an active rather than a passive process. It constructs rather than records reality. Perception is a process of inference in which people construct their own version of reality on the basis of information provided through the five senses. For the average person who's rolled along in life as the average person does today, to recognize that my mind, based on its content, literally constructs the world that I see. Perception, including sensations in the body, are autobiographical. This is another important point to understand about perception. The thing that perception, the constructs of the mind, tell us first and foremost is about the content of the mind. It may be massaged into a picture of Harry or Bill or Mary or Hortense, but it may give you accurate information about them, and it may not, but it will always give you accurate information about the content of your own mind. So once again, perception is a mental construct generated by the body-mind nervous system. There's a really interesting video, if you look it up on YouTube, by a gentleman named Anil Seth. It's a TED Talk, so if you just put in your search engine in YouTube, Anil, A-N-I-L, Seth, S-E-T-H, TED Talk. He's a professor of cognitive and computational neuroscience at the University of Sussex in England, and he explains, quote, one of the statements he makes is the whole world we, and I'll put the word think in there, we think we see is an hallucination, unique to each person. And then he goes on to say is, when we agree on our shared hallucinations, we call it reality. Powerful insight. So now we realize that there are two worlds going on here. There's the world of actuality, actually occurs in the energy system, and then reality is this construct of the mind that gives meaning to our actuality. Some other interesting research from the Jonas Salk Institute for Biological Studies. And one of the things they say is we live in the past and our brain makes up for it. They've measured the mind in the act of generating perception and realizing a perception. And here's what they say. There's a delay of 70 thousandths of a second from the time our eyes receive information to the time our brain completes its generating of our reality. So, again, what kind of things do we need to know about perception in order to put it in its proper place? It takes time for the body-mind to convert actuality, the data that it receives, into pictures, or what we call perception. So by definition, in order for perception to be generated, it's showing us something from the past. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a cell biologist, gives us some insight into the power of perception relative to our physical structures. Quote, he says, the moment you change your perception is the moment you rewrite the chemistry of your body-mind unit. The moment you change your perception, and this magnificent tool that came out of the first century Aramaic language 2,000 years ago shows exactly how to collapse perception, and each time you do, according to Bruce Lipton as a cell biologist, what you're doing is you're rewriting the literal, on the level where we believe in chemistry, the literal chemistry of your body. Socrates, thousands of years ago, said we become mad and delirious, and fears and terrors assail us. All these things we endure from the brain, or we might say the mind. Perception, constructed out of unresolved trauma, has us living in a world that exists in one place and one place only, and that's between our ears. So these energetic patterns and responses to trauma are passed from generation to generation. Once again, go back to this statement in the ancient scriptures. Look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. So this primo technology that was developed 2,000 years ago, with which one can collapse perception and directly expose the underlying dynamics, the underlying unresolved trauma, to the healing forces of love. That's what forgiveness does. Now, sadly, the technology of forgiveness at its root has been totally mistranslated and destroyed by our modern culture. The world tells us we need to forgive. I need to let you off the hook for what's going on inside of me. So my mind is telling me a story about something that's inside of me, and somebody comes along and says, yeah, and you need to forgive Bill for that. So I let Bill off the hook because my mind is playing out a why is this happening to me again experience inside of me, telling me about myself. But since I'm in denial, I've massaged that picture into a picture of Bill, and I pretend and I think that it's actually Bill's fault. In the Aramaic, you would never have been told to forgive Bill because he's your object of attention and you're in trauma. Actually, it's interesting. There are two words that are missing in the translations of the scriptures where it says forgive your brother. It doesn't say that. In Aramaic, it says forgive as to your brother. So if I'm interacting with Bill, and Bill provides the stimulus, the resonance for an old trauma in me, and my mind produces a pained experience out of that, and, you know, shy of Bill coming up, cancel a thought and punching me in the nose, pain or trauma in me. But he can sure do something that would resonate it in me. And so should I forgive Bill for that? Would it make sense? Is that going to resolve the trauma that my mind uses repeatedly to create my why is this happening to me again experiences because I let everybody in the world off the hook for it? I mean, it's silly. Properly understood, what the average person means by the word forgiveness is actually the Greek concept of pardoning, to let another off the hook for what's showing up as pain perception in my own mind. And, you know, if we believe that, we've been instructed in a fraud. Actual first century Aramaic forgiveness is how one can reliably, consistently and persistently remove disintegrative content from within, and recognizing that when you do that, as Bruce Lipton says, you're changing your chemistry. Every diseased perceptual construct of the mind is reflective of diseased chemistry in tissue, and when you start removing those diseased energetic patterns, guess what? The stress and the load is removed from tissue and healing starts to occur. And if one understands that, starts to understand the nature of perception, and then consistently and persistently removes the disintegrative content from within, using forgiveness, going within rather than letting them off the hook, I need to forgive as to what that person brought up in me. I need to go inside myself and remove that energetic pattern of pain or trauma that's been unresolved perhaps for 100 generations in my bloodline. This is a reliable way to change physiology, to heal trauma, to rewrite genes, and change the content of the body-mind, and literally change what's passed on to future generations. Now, the relative ease of changing the body-mind's content is quite surprising once one has the brain cells to recognize and use the technology. Henry David Thoreau brilliantly observed of perception. It is not what you look at that matters. It's what you see. That is what you perceive. Since all perception, all appearances in the mind come from within, pained perception is always a projection. And projection is not the act, as our culture generally teaches, is not the act of taking something that's inside of us and putting it outside of us. Perception is the act of taking internal content, making a whole world of perception, a whole world of pictures out of it, massaging it into a picture where I can believe that it's somebody outside that's the cause of it. And so pain perception is always a projection. You remember the ancient warning, do not judge by appearances. All perception is an appearance. Think about, without any of the other evidence, just think about the fact that the mind is showing you something 70 thousandths of a second after it is experienced. So that what we think we're looking at out there when we, think we're looking through our eyes as a fact is actually a construct of our minds. And once again, the ancient word, do not judge by appearances. All perception is an appearance. It's a reflection of data stored in and impacting the mind, body, nervous systems. When all energies that we hold within us, physical, emotional, mental, genetic, are firmly grounded in truth, the accuracy of our internal guidance system, our perception, will be restored. As fear and hostility-based perceptions are uprooted and the corrupt data behind them is removed, that is forgiven, then pain, regrets, and disturbances disappear. Our natural state of serenity is restored. Once healing occurs, all else in the mind falls into place. So people start to use these tools and they're like, well, this is impossible. How can I ever change this? And as they begin to apply it, those moments of serenity become deeper and deeper, and those moments of physiological peace become more prevalent. Since we're all once children, healthy or healed relationships with our fathers and mothers literally are vital to our well-being. Psychologists have identified a dynamic they call the father effect, which of course could be as easily called the mother effect. And why I'm pointing this out is because it's all based in perception. So what they've shown in this research is that sons with a good relationship with their fathers tend to handle stress more effectively. Daughters have a healthy relationship with their fathers, have a higher sense of self-esteem, and make better relationship choices. Children with healthy father relationships have 40% of the suspension or expulsion rates from school and are twice as likely to go to college and find stable employment after high school. These are just like hard statistics. If you haven't healed what's in your mind from traumas experienced or perhaps repeated in a relationship with parents, then those traumas will tend to go on being repeated in every aspect of life. Research tells us that kids involved with involved fathers have 25% of the teen pregnancy and 20% of the incarceration rate of single-parent homes. There's a simple practice with which to gently begin the healing of inherited generational deficiencies or unconscious dynamics in the mind with regard to parents, as often as necessary, and until achieved with great enthusiasm and sincerity, each day, whether your parents are in their bodies or not, alive or dead, wish both of your parents a sweet and awesome day, especially if you experience trauma in relationship to them. And then, having done that on a regular basis, follow up with action toward them, action that's based in love. And when you do that, this action energetically, remember that the mind works through resonance, law of energy exchange. So if I'm in an interaction with a parent where I have trauma, I'm likely going to perceive them through my unresolved trauma. And this especially applies in intimate relationships. By taking that action of behavior based in love toward them, energetically, that active presence of love passes through and delivers healing to the underlying structures of my own body, my own mind, my own nervous system. You know, when they said, honor thy father and thy mother, that wasn't some kind of a religious dictate. It was a mechanism for, especially if there was trauma in that parental relationship, it was a mechanism for healing what's left over within one's own nervous system from those trauma-based interactions. So the person who had a traumatic relationship with that's been unresolved, when they focus on that parent, and the more traumatic the relationship is, the more important it is to do this. To simply work toward perceiving them through the active presence of love. Once you understand the internal nature of healing trauma and aligning the mind with systems that are intrinsic for its proper operation, healing parental dynamics becomes an obvious major key to living a truly full life. This is especially true where there was an absent, alcoholic, or abusive parent. This is how one reinvents themselves and is inoculated against both receiving and passing on generational pain and behavior. If you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see a Father's Day service that I did last year. And we go into more succinctly the reason why that command to honor father and mother and parents, and recognize that honor means to take behavior toward that parent that's based in love into action toward them. Live in anger, fear, and upset around parents, unresolved trauma around parents, and lead a totally sane life. And that simple practice of each day, just wishing them a sweet and awesome day, truly. And if you can't find the sweetness to do that, it's because there isn't the sweetness there within your own structure to provide you with that perception. Your perception will be a reflection of the content of your mind. And if when you think about parents, there is some sort of trauma within the content of your mind, then you know you've got work to do. Yes, you know, maybe your parents were way off base and they have work to do too, but strictly speaking, their work is none of your business. Your work is, where is the situation that I can't bring love forward from within me? And that situation is exactly where my forgiveness work is. And as you go through that, as you apply the tools, especially in that parental relationship, that's where the process of inner healing is completed. So if you ever asked yourself the question, why is this happening to me again? You have conflicts in your relationships you want to resolve. If you're ready to dig in and do some real work, as you gain a depth of understanding and experience of first century Aramaic forgiveness, this technology is the most profound thing that has ever shown up on planet Earth. Again, if you go to our YouTube channel, there are several videos there that will walk you through the process. One is a 3-hour recording of why is this happening to me again? And that will walk you through the whole process of first century Aramaic forgiveness. 24-minute PowerPoint on the technical understanding if you go to the YouTube channel. And to get to our YouTube channel, you just go to YouTube and type in Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, R-Y-C-E. Or you can go to our website, whyagain.org. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the social media links. Click on YouTube and just put in the word PowerPoint. Thank you to Bill Costantino. Bill is a gentleman who's a corporate trainer. He came and did our teachers training several years ago and really wanted to get the understanding of this first century Aramaic forgiveness process down pat. And being good at creating PowerPoints, he and I interacted for about a year on refining these principles, and he created a PowerPoint that diagrams out exactly how and why the forgiveness process works. So that's also on our YouTube channel. A live video recording of a session where we did a worksheet, step by step, here's how forgiveness works process on our YouTube channel. And as you engage in this process of forgiveness, much confusion will tend to come up in the mind, and that's a desirable thing because confusion is one of the stages, one of the very important stages of healing. If I think I know the truth, this problem that's going on inside of me, the reason I'm in pain is all because of Bill, then the truth is I don't have a clue about why I'm in pain. And as I apply forgiveness, I'll begin undoing those dynamics. And of course, the reason for this show, the reason we're here 5 days a week having this conversation is to answer your refined questions. There will be many stages of confusion come up, and it will take commitment to stay engaged in the forgiveness process. You can go to our website, whyagain.org, and you'll see a picture of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? If you click on that, you can go in and you can download the book free in any one of, I think we're at 9 different languages right now. And that, from another perspective, and it's a good complement to the video, explains, basically it's a conversation with this imaginary yet very real character. He's made up of, the conversations I have with him are from real healing experiences with people. So there's a conversation with this character named Richard, and we walk him through the whole forgiveness process. So it's a freebie. The book's out of print, so we can't sell you one. Although you can usually find, if you like to have a physical book, there are usually lots of used copies on Amazon or on eBay. So you're welcome to grab that. And last but not least, you can go to your app store on your phone, type in the words Heartland, Heartland, Aramaic forgiveness, and you'll be looking at the world's only forgiveness app. It's free, totally free, and totally private. Of course, the second and fourth Thursday of each month at 3:30 Eastern Time, you can join us for the Hear My Voice Book Club session that we do. This particular month, we've completed. We usually do the second and fourth Thursday, but because the facilitator of the Hear My Voice Book Club is off this week, we won't be doing a session. But the recordings are on our YouTube channel, so you can go and give them a listen. So there are, I don't even know how many dozens of videos that you're welcome to access on our YouTube channel. And it's all about creating support for understanding. A 13th century Sufi poet, Rumi, really sums this whole presentation up when he says, love is the cure. Your pain will give birth to more pain until your eyes exhale love as effortlessly as your body yields its scent. And so we're here to support people through the confusion of the healing process when one starts to directly access old traumatic energetic patterns and has difficulty kicking out of those patterns and back into a connected state of love, we're here to hold space for that and to help to clarify the process. We have 12 years, I don't know how many thousands of hours in the archives. You can go back and give a listen to all of the shows we've done 5 days a week for the last 12 years. And so there are thousands of hours there to support you. If you happen to, by the way, listen to a show where there isn't a descriptor, you know, Jeannie has been working to put descriptors on all of the shows, but some of them, you know, didn't get written up. So if you happen to listen to one of those shows, it would be really awesome if you would drop Jeannie an email, JEANIE @WHYagain.org, with a brief description of what was in that video, and then she'll attach it to that video, and people will be able to search for the through our radio shows and have some knowledge of what's in any particular video, or pardon me, audio track from the radio show. It's what we're here to do, and we hope that this has made sense for you, and that the review, if it's a review for you, has maybe kicked in some new pieces of understanding. If it has, push one and share it with us, and or perhaps has aroused some questions. And so our call-in number, if you happen to be on one of those stations where we can't see you in our control panel, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you're listening to the show directly. So if you're on one of those stations where we're syndicated and we can't see you, if you call, you're listening to the show directly, and then if you push 1, that will raise a hand in the control panel, and Jeannie will introduce you by your area code. So, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody out there in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
No, and that was an awesome 45-minute intro, Michael.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what I've done from the last 3 days, I've written a course on healing, a holistic healing course. And what I've done the last 3 days is I've gone through that whole body of information, and you can access that on our website. I'm sure that Jeannie's probably already, now that I'm talking about it, putting a link into the notes. You can access that written course with all of the links that I've spoken about and some additional ones that I really didn't bring into the conversation. So I really covered that course in completion, in whole, in the last 3 days, and so you might want to go grab it and allow yourself to review it. It's the whole process is one of rebuilding brain cells and moving into brain cells connected to love, as one resolves and removes those connected to any form of hostility or fear, which is what corrupts the perceptual mind and leaves us believing that everybody else in the world is the problem. Again, one of my favorite tongue-in-cheek lines is, if you've been through a particular painful reality 87 different times with 42 different people, you're the one that was there every time. It's about you. It's not about them. So it's cleanup time, and we're here to support the cleanup. And every person, everybody wants a magical person who will fix it for them. In fact, there's a whole world of magical thinking in churchianity today in America, that this man Yeshua is going to fix everything in your life and in your mind for you. Now, that's not consistent with what he said. If you go back 2,000 years ago, they asked him, what do we need to do? And he told them, and literally half of his audience turned away. Half of the disciples said, too hard a saying, and left. They weren't willing to do the work that's required. This man, Yeshua, brought a work of recovery of human life. If you listen to many in churchianity circles, as well-intentioned as it is, you'll notice that it's always about how he's going to take care of it for you. And in a sense, because he gave us the instructions for how to take care of it, that's true. But if you're one of those people that when you're told there's work to be done, you need to face the traumas that you're carrying around inside of you, and you say too hard a saying, and you want to leave it, then know that when you leave, you get to take all your baggage with you. Our invitation here is for you to open your baggage, to be responsible, to join a community that's about supporting people who want to resolve every untoward energy held within their structures, held within their generational patterns that reflect as trauma-based perceptions in their minds. The core of what Yeshua taught was how to collapse this thing called perception and how to rid ourselves of those errant perceptions.
Do you have a hand?
Well, I've got two of them, honey, but gee, let's talk to them.
Okay. It's Susan, area code 610. You're on the air.
Hi. Yeah,
Welcome,
that was
young
a
lady.
marathon, Michael. Thanks.
I have fun doing that.
What? Oh, say again?
I have fun doing marathons.
It's good you have that capability because you're left high and dry sometimes, and you have to do it every day for an hour or something. It's an amazing thing. So, your talk has reminded me of a question I've been meaning to ask for a long time. When Jesus talked the Sermon on the Mount, basically he winds it up by saying, "Be ye perfect as your Father is in heaven is." And yet, in those Beatitudes, he says the 10 Commandments plus a lot of other things. Basically, if you, like, for instance, if you look someone and have a lustful thought in your heart, you're definitely not perfect. You're in bad trouble. But what, because for me, there's no possibility that I'll ever be perfect. And I'm wondering what the Aramaic said. Is it different? Did Jesus really say, "Be you perfect"?
You know, I don't have have not looked into the specifics of that passage from that point of view. However, my take would be, you know, if we listen to him, he says, "I come to bring you life more abundantly, not I come to bring you dogma and doctrine." So he comes to bring support for living as a human being. And when we live as our created essence love, for me, you know, I'm not coming from the Aramaic here, I'm just saying my construct of that would be when I'm living from active present love and I've rid myself of all trauma within, then I'm going to be in that place that word perfect would be descriptive of. And it's doing our work that moves us into that perfection. If you look at each of the major instruction sets that he gives, like for instance, people tell us there's this thing called the Lord's Prayer. There's no such thing as the Lord's Prayer. That's a fraud. If you look at what they call the Lord's Prayer in the Aramaic language, it's a set of instructions for how to achieve a state of being. If we look at the Beatitudes are a set of instructions for how to achieve a state of being. And, you know, when we hear him saying, "I come to bring you life and bring life more abundantly," the best definition I've been able to come up with for life is that life is love flowing through a cell. And our world clearly, you know, teaches us right out of the chute how to do things that restrict experiencing ourselves and others as that presence of love, and our lives as love flowing through our cellular structure. And so when you look from that perspective, each of those instruction sets is about how to remove the inhibitors that prevent us from experiencing ourselves as active present love, so we can step back to that place we were designed to live in, which, again, I think that word perfect, as you're referring to there, would be the descriptor of that state. So ultimately, if I remove all hostility and fear, and I come back to the experience of myself as active present love, then we're now moving into and living in that perfected state, which is just our natural state. It's the way we came out of the womb. It's the way we're designed to live. And it's like we live in a culture that's specialty is to knock the awareness of ourselves as love out of us and then send us out to find somebody to love or to find somebody to love us as though it's something we could get from someone else, rather than coming back inside ourselves and doing the work of perfecting the state of being that we started out in and was polluted by these generational patterns and what the ancient scriptures talk about as the mind of man.
Which leads me to another question. That's good. I heard that. And
awesome.
I am listening to an audiobook on Audible, and it's beautifully narrated, so that I would recommend, if you need a break and want to shut your eyes, you could listen. And it's called Jayber Crow, Jayber Crow, by Wendell Berry, who's a wonderful poet, but he wrote this book. The reason I'm bringing it up here is this is about a young man who lost his parents, his very loving parents, very, very early and was on his own. But because he was well loved and cared for and nurtured, the way you do Aria Rain, he was equipped to go out into the world with nothing and trust his life, trust his situation, trust other people, point where he could really let God or whatever it is guide him. And I don't know if I'm halfway through, but my question out of all this is, he may have generational trauma, but he doesn't have immediate power person trauma, by the looks.
Right.
And of course, this is a novel. So here you've got a guy who is, in some ways, he came into the world as love, retained the as loveness, and then power person people, if they were going to click into any of that, were gone. So whatever trauma he would have been just from generational trauma. And maybe, of course, the trauma of losing his parents. But he seems much more of a clear slate. And
if that needs to be experienced as a trauma.
If it needs to be, absolutely.
There's a presumption that losing parents, quote-unquote losing parents, one, there's a presumption that because parents leave their bodies, that they've been lost, and two, that has to be a trauma. And my offering is both things are false, but they are definitely perceptual constructs of our minds. But there's another experience available to us when we can delete those things.
Well, it doesn't feel in this book as if he did experience them as a profound trauma. It was certainly a surprise and a change. Mm-hmm. But he was put in with an aunt, the only aunt that was around who happened to have been childless and was just so loving and so happy to have a son for a while. And he probably was 7 or 8 or maybe 10 when this happened. But just as I'm recommending it because it's sheer beauty.
I see it. I'm looking at it. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Sweet.
And it gives you a vision of living as a human being, having a human life. And, of course, the love in him, which my daughter says, Mom, you just wait. The love in him it kindles the love in other people to the point where it's just so gorgeous, but I'm not even
contagious.
Far enough to... Yeah, it's contagious, and that is certainly true. And, of course, that leads me to other questions. For instance, simply my experience lately of practicing this gentle art of blessing has stirred.
That was the first thing that came to mind when you spoke of this book. It sounds like he's in concert with the gentleman who wrote The Gentle Art of Blessing.
It is. It's amazing. But he thought he might be called, he was brought up after his aunt died. He went into an orphanage, which was run by a Christian, and boy, talk about a way to turn a kid away from religion. He decided he didn't have a calling because he had too many questions, and his questions are gorgeous, and you'll love those too. But I've noticed just in my own life that I feel like a walking phenolon. I see the dark stuff boiling out all over the place, and if I told you yesterday or the day before or whatever that it's hard work sometimes. It doesn't feel natural, but it's a practice, and I'm doing it, and I can feel shifts as I do it. Sometimes the shifts are pretty small, and there's residual stuff, and I'm dealing, it. I just hope this is part of the healing process. I guess that's my question. Is this normal?
You're right on track.
Good, okay.
It's normal that whatever generationally is stored within your structure, that's unlike the active presence of love. When an opening where love is present happens, that those things are going to surface, and you're going to move through them. You're going to process through them. And I will definitely grab that book and give it a listen. It sounds like it'd be a sweet meditation. There's also another movie out there, and I'm not sure where it's available at this moment, but it was interesting. This goes back, I'm not even sure how many years ago, probably 14, 15 years ago. You might remember there's a movie called 300. Pretty brutal,
I don't remember.
Violent, well,
really?
Pretty heavy duty. And it was a movie Jeannie and I chose to go and see. We were in Tampa, and I remember we were in Tampa because we ended up, that's our entertainment when we're traveling. We ended up doing a double header, and we watched 300, which is absolutely brutal. And then we went to the IMAX theater in Tampa, where they project up on the ceiling. That's the screen. And there's a movie called Mystic India.
Wow.
And it's essentially the story you're talking about with this young man. And it's a true story based on an Indian mystic from back in the, I forget exactly, 1700s. And as a child, he knew why he was here. I think, if I remember correctly, he's maybe 12 or 13 when he knows what he's here for, and his family tries to hold on to him. He's 11. Okay. He actually, there's a raging river right near his house, and in order to escape his family to go and do his destiny, he goes and jumps in the river so they can't follow him. And he spends the next 18 years traveling India teaching who we are as human beings. I think about it, it just like resonates such an energy for me. In fact, you've just helped me to realize we're going to go back and watch it again, because it's just so powerful that this kid, literally, I mean, historically, he's an historical figure, and this is what he did, and he traveled India teaching humans how to be human. So joining you in that project of healing.
Okay, it's 2 o'clock too. I was going to ask something else, but I won't. Thank you very much.
Well, let's hold that one for Monday.
It might be gone by then, but I'll try to hang on to it. Okay.
Well, the shortest pencil's better than the longest memory.
I think I've already forgotten, though. That's the trouble.
All right, dear heart, we appreciate you. Everybody have a blessed one. Thanks for joining us.